Alright. Welcome to FaBled Hunters.
I'm Yuanji.
I'm Saint.
And today we're going to open some stuff.
Yes, we are. Look at this box.
Who's that from?
It is from none other than James White himself.
Ooh.
Yeah, usually when we get a mystery box from LSS, it usually just says Legend Story Studios, but this, I believe, came straight from James. And normally I get a notification. So
Is it like a late Christmas present?
I don't know. We were notified about the last box, right? With the props where I got to cosplay a little bit and I got me during the FaBled. That wasn't mine. You'll see it at the Pro Tour in New Jersey.
Maybe James is like, oh, Sam, by the way, here's another little thing to bring to the Pro Tour.
Yeah, maybe. And we'll have to get permission based on what contents are in this box, but it's kind of small. There's stuff shifting around.
Okay.
I have a feeling there's sealed product in there, so we'll see. We'll definitely get permission before we air it. That said, before we even get into this, there's a lot of stuff that's been happening in Fab, right?
Yes. I think the topic that's on most players' minds right now is recently they said that they were going to do a ban release update at the beginning of April. They released the update. There were no changes, like no bans, no restrictions. However, they also wrote in their article that they would revise it on May 2nd, which is one day after the last CC event before the Pro Tour.
Okay.
I wanted to bring up the topic because right now there's a lot of discussion, a lot of feedback from players. Most of the feedback has actually not been so positive.
Yeah.
Not necessarily with the decision on what LSS wants to ban or unban, but more so to do with how they're kind of handling the situation where they are making a lot of, uncertainty before the Pro Tour. I know a lot of players have been kind of asking, leading up into the April announcement, I don't really know what I should be doing for testing. It's pretty funny. I responded to some of them. I'm just relaxing, watching some Netflix or something.
Yeah.
But now that the Pro Tour is rapidly approaching, I guess players are feeling a little bit uncertain about whether or not the games that they play right now will be meaningful. If Bravo's star of the show gets Living Legend, maybe then that'll change a lot of things. If they make any bans or unbans, that would also change things up a little bit.
Yeah, well, as of the filming of the video, which is early April, I think Bravo has, 814 Living Legends points? Is that about right?
So he has to win. So the breakdown is he has to win the calling in Taiwan. And then
that's a big one, right? That's really make or break right there.
Yeah, and then he has to win 3 out of the 4 CC Battle Hardens that there are left in this season.
So he would need to win 80% of the final events, including the big event in the first place. And the likelihood of that, I would just off the top of my head, it's probably lower than 10% based on the meta breakdown, in my opinion. Right?
Yeah, I would say even though a lot of the results that have come out so far, Bravo Star of the Show has basically won all of the higher level tournaments.
Yep.
I would say that a lot of it has to do with player inexperience with piloting the other decks. Okay. Because I think when you play all of the top tier decks at the highest level, Bravo Star of the Show doesn't necessarily have a favorable matchup. But I think best 50-50.
Yeah.
So I would say that now that these Taiwanese players, these players in Europe, and then later on there's going to be one in Pittsburgh. After these players have had months of experience playing against Bravo, probably is likely that Bravo won't win all or most of the tournaments.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, even if Bravo was 60% of the meta, you do 60%, so you're down to 0.6 off of the calling, and then 0.6, 0.6, 0.6, 0.6.
Yeah, it's not even it's a third.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, Bravo's maybe a third of the highest performing decks.
And wasn't Pheno Black a tunic counter away from winning the last one? Supposedly that was a meme for a week, right?
Yeah. I think he would have still lost. I think they looked at the game afterwards. Basically he would have gotten Michael down 3 or 4 more life But
okay.
I think at that point, the game was already like somewhat decided.
Okay.
If the viewers were watching like pretty closely, I think like the pivotal point for that game is Michael Hamilton's plan was to like stack his deck, and then like towards the later part of the game, he would like hit the Bravo ability like multiple times in a row.
Yeah.
But in order for him to beat Fino, he had to get lucky and flip like the 3 elements plus like an Oakenhold.
Yep. And draw hard, right?
Yeah, at like one point in the game, like before he got to like do his stack. And then like that's what I mean. Like honestly, like the matchup isn't favored. Like, it's not favored. Like Michael had to get lucky. Also, he had to play very well.
Yeah.
But
and he did both, right?
Yeah.
That's why he's a 2-time calling champion.
Yep.
It's they're lucky and they're good. You need a combination of luck to survive up to that point.
Yeah.
But you need to be good as well to really take it down. So it was a little bit of both, I would say.
Yeah. Right? So I think ultimately my take on the whole like ban situation is that for better or for worse, I think all players should have the goal in mind of having Flesh and Blood grow as a game.
Yeah.
That's only best for everyone.
Yeah.
And if LSS thinks that this is the way to make like the Pro Tour more exciting by introducing this like level of uncertainty, obviously I guess it's not great for the people who are competing. They don't feel like they can adequately prepare. But I think that ultimately if you're a person who is competing in these events as a participant, then you kind of just have to like roll with the punches, right? Like whatever the circumstances, you gotta play with like the cards you're dealt.
Yeah. I mean, it's called the Pro Tour. You have to treat it like a professional endeavor, right? Like we were talking over lunch. I told you, and I've mentioned many times, that I watch the LCK and I watch the League of Legends professional play, and they need to adjust. Like if let's say Champion X, for example, I thought Corky, who's this little dwarf in a plane. Corky is really, really strong, and he was this season, but then he got nerfed. Immediately after that hero is nerfed, people have to figure out what the new plan A, plan B, plan C are. And these professionals, they do so. And in professional card play, like May 2nd versus, May 11th when it's the Pro Tour, you got May 2nd banned and restricted. There's probably only a 10% chance of that even happening, that Starvo needs to get edited out of the meta, right? You've got 9 whole days. Even when I was playing cards, and I was, pursuing the higher levels of competition in Magic, I probably played 10 to 15 games a day. Like after school, I'd call friends over, different group of friends, to play test every single day. And this was in high school. I mean, now it's 20, 30 years later, and I don't think anything's changed. If you want to be good at something, you want to compete at the highest level in the world, which is what the Pro Tour essentially is, then you should be good enough to adjust with the meta within 9 days. 9 days is more than enough. Like pro players in League get a portion of 1 week to even figure it out. So
to play devil's advocate, I do feel for the players that maybe like they don't have like a well-established like network of like an environment of people to like play with, or not even that, just like not having access to all the cards. Let's say if you've been playing like this deck, you invested like a substantial like portion of your money into this deck. Yeah. Now that they make changes and you decide like you want to play a different deck. So I definitely feel for the players on that level. I think that to me it's more of like even like playing at the Pro Tour is kind of like an achievement in and of itself. Yeah. And then so I think you just have to like kind of make the best of it. Obviously like the situation isn't ideal, and I hope that LSS kind of like learns from the feedback that people are giving and has maybe like a better approach in the future. But that being said, I don't think that it's like all negative, and I think that hopefully this will bring like a more exciting tournament for viewers and for people who enjoy the game. Yeah, I hope the dynamicism attracts more players to the game, not less. And I think that the negative feedback online or within the groups, it's just a lot of entitlement and whining, and there's just too much of that in general. Enough about that, though. The bans are the bans, and I agree with Fluke, and I agree with Tall Timmy. I love their little graphic of Starvo giving everybody the finger. That's how I feel. And it was a whole lot about nothing. It was a whole lot of over-speculation. And it's LSS's game. If they're going to bring out
a champion that is strong, it is their right to. And throughout the history of Magic, there's always been normally 3 prominent decks, 3 contenders, with a maximum of maybe 5, maybe 6 max within a certain meta that's really viable in competitive play, right?
I think that Flesh and Blood eventually will get to like the level like if you play Yu-Gi-Oh! Or if you play like Legacy Magic, where there's like so many decks that every hero is like kind of doing their own powerful thing. I think right now the game is just so young that there just aren't like enough cards that are released. And LSS is releasing 2 supplemental sets this year, so hopefully like they're recognizing that they need to like kind of bring everybody's like power level up a little bit. I think that right now like where the best decks are is kind of where they want the direction of the game to go. I remember I had some friends who used to play Magic professionally. When they first started trying out Flesh and Blood, they said that like they thought that the game system was interesting, but that ultimately the games themselves felt a little bit boring or drawn out, because before like Modern came out, like when it was like Arcane Rising and WTR only, or like WTR only.
Crew? What about Crew?
Yeah, with Crew, like
the first 3.
The games themselves often went to like fatigue. That's why they banned like Drone of Brutality. Like like at that point in time, like that was like the thing that really mattered. And so I think that they're bringing the game up. Offense is going to getting better and better.
Of course.
So I think. I mean, like that's just like how I see the game.
That's how the game evolves. There's now more depth to the game than there used to be. Like there'd be Dorinthia versus Bravo matches. I remember back in the day, like 6 months ago, where I'd play to fatigue, and it's like crap. All my red Iron Song responses, all my red cards are done. All my highest power cards are done. I'm using the occasional yellows because there weren't that many yellows, and I'm using pitching blues to use blue cards, and he's also blocking with certain cards, and all of his, all of Bravo's spinal crushes and crippling crushes already gone, and we're just in this locked type of, that's what fatigue is about, and I believed it. It made me feel like all the different levels of Flesh and Blood, where we started out with the strongest, we had full gear, full everything, we had so much options, and in the end, we were like throwing everything, including the kitchen sink, at the opponent, just to get through. I actually like it. I wouldn't call it grindy or anything, but I could see how some want to see more action. But like you said, with heroes like Starvo with that built-in buff, it makes games faster too. And then with Prism, there's also control. With Viserai, there's kind of half control, half aggression with the rune chants and whatnot. Right?
But I think in general, it's just like not being able to like block out like all of like your opponent's damage if you like commit to it. That's just like the direction that the game is going to go. So for better or for worse, we're in the period of time where LSS is still in the process of ramping all the other heroes, all the other classes up. And,
absolutely,
I guess like we'll just like wait and see. I'm excited for when the new set drops in June, and for the second Pro Tour in France to see like kind of what happens at that point. I think like the message is just like play the game that you have right now instead of playing the game that you want to play.
Absolutely, don't whine about how you'd like the game to be, because the people actually doing the work, putting in their blood, sweat, and tears, have put in so many tens of thousands of hours collectively that they've thought more about the game, they know more about the game, they know more about the hurdles and the challenges, being literally eyeballs deep in the business, than anybody viewing at home. So stop acting like, LSS should do this, or else LSS should do that, or else what? Or else you're going to be mad, or else you're going to be one of the 200,000 people that actually support the game, and what, you're going to vote with your wallet? Please, it's a new game, it's growing. Most people worldwide are enjoying it, and it's growing worldwide. There's a lot less people whining from every other point in the world, the other, call it 97% of the global population, than just Americans, right? So, that's enough about Starvo and the bans. What else, man? There's been so much. You've been traveling, I've been traveling, we're both, knee deep in work all over the place.
Yeah, you said on one of the last times that we filmed that you thought that LSS was going to release the print run soon.
Yeah.
And they just released the numbers for Monarch.
Yeah, they just did, like, even this week, right? This past week, like 3-4 days ago, at 125,000 boxes. Right?
I don't want to say I told you so, Sam, but do you remember our conversation?
Yeah.
And you were like, oh, you think that, like, because we were talking at the very beginning when we first started doing the show, and we were speculating on what we thought that the print run for Monarch was going to be.
Yeah.
And you were like, oh, it's probably like 2 times crew. And I was like, oh, probably 3 to 4 times even.
Okay. Well, afterwards,
that's my period of gloating.
That's your gloating?
Yeah.
Hey. To be fair, I publicly said on Rudy's channel and on our thing that we were looking at 105,000 boxes.
Okay.
Right? I said 105. That was the last number. It was pretty close to Legends. Legends for Magic the Gathering had 97.5 thousand comparable boxes, or something like 2.3 million packs of Legends were ever made, which was 36 booster packs times 65,000 boxes. You convert that to 24-pack booster boxes, and that's 97,500. But I went a little higher because Legends was 1994. It is literally 28 years later, and we're now in 2022. So, yeah, 97.5 thousand boxes. I scaled it up to 105,000, but the actual number is 125,000. So guess what? It went over by 19%. But a bunch of the crowd, they were like, oh, it's probably 200,000 or 300,000 boxes. It's too much. It's printed to oblivion. And they were bitching, moaning, whining again, like they were. Same group of people that were bitching, moaning, and whining about the Starvo non-ban are now bitching, moaning, and whining about this being printed to oblivion. And I've said again and again and again, I go back to 1994 Revised, which was the 4th set, I think 4th or 5th set ever made. Well, Alpha, let's not call it limited edition, doesn't really count. There's Unlimited, Arabian, Antiquities, and then Revised. So the first, to market release of Magic the Gathering was Revised in April of 1994. They printed about 1 million booster boxes. Okay? Monarch is the 4th set. They printed 125,000 booster boxes. So they printed an 1/8 less Monarch boxes, or an 1/8 of the Monarch boxes that they printed of Magic the Gathering Revised. Right? So this is 1/8 the size. This is about the size of Legends. Probably 20-30% more because I was off by 19%. And, look, Revised is now a $15,000 box. Right? And there are 1 million of them. And it's still $15,000. The 1 in 3 box Underground Sea that you could receive in Revised, because it's roughly 120 rares, roughly 108 packs per 3 boxes. That's $1,000 rare. And then the next one's Volcanic Island, which is like $900 or something like that. So you could still get close to $1,000 cards in every 3rd box. Right? So you take out the library for Monarch, and you're looking at the legendaries, right? Like, could these legendaries, could the Galaxy Black, could the Phantasmal Footsteps, could the Valiant Dynamo go back to 1,000? I would say yes. It could even go past 1,000, right?
Yeah, I think, we talked about this at lunch as well. So I think a lot of people who kind of like jumped into Monarch initially when they had like the pre-release craze, it was kind of like the perfect storm of circumstances between the government printing money, and then also just like everybody kind of like having their eye on collectibles. And like the resale culture.
It was right after the hot period, right after the Black Swan COVID spike of end of 2020, late 2020, early 2021.
So I think that if you that's like your only context into like collecting and like investing in trading cards, you might feel like, oh, like a Monarch is like a failed product. But I think you have to have like a long-term like focus on this, and I mentioned this at lunch. If you look at Ice Age, like Ice Age is basically kind of like Magic's like second or like 3rd year into development. So it's not like one of like the first like year sets. And that set came out in '96, and now it's 2022, and that box is like a little bit over $1,000.
1,100. It was up to almost 1,500 at one point, but now an Ice Age box of 36 packs, and Ice Age is printed, I think, even more than revised. It was printed so high that WotC was ashamed to even, or they didn't want to release print run results. It was nearly oblivion. And Ice Age and Fallen Empires were printed more than even revised. And revised, we know, is 1 million or so boxes.
I just bring that up to put into perspective when people say like they want like all these boxes to hit like a K or like whatever.
Yeah, Monta 1K, that meme.
To kind of like understand like the process that it takes to like go into it. Like sometimes it takes like decades to reach that point. And it's just like a lot of the times like it's not just like steady like increase. Like this isn't like an index fund. No. It's not like how these things behave. I think like a more like holistic outlook would be to kind of just track the development of the game or the progression of the game as a whole. Like, are more players coming into the game? Are people having fun with it? And to look at that, because I think ultimately that's going to be like the metric. Like when you see like why I think Magic Sealed and like Pokemon Sealed has done so well over the course of these last like couple decades, I think it's because people genuinely have like a lot of fun.
And there's nostalgia, products. Yes. Yeah. They're being nostalgic about what happened decades ago, 2 decades ago. They're not just sitting on the product every single day, year 1, year 2, month 8, month 6, going, oh, it needs to go from $80 to 1K to the moon. And if it doesn't go to the moon, what are you going to do then? You're going to do exactly what a good amount of people are doing right now, which is bitching, moaning, whining, complaining, and acting entitled like LSS owes them money. LSS doesn't owe you guys anything. LSS needed to develop a good game. They needed to develop a good set. They came out with a good set. Chain was awesome, even too awesome. Prism is still, very dominant in the meta. Bolton was fun. Levia, I'm sorry, brute players. Brutes are just brutes. And it's okay. Maybe something will, maybe the pendulum will swing in the future. You got to be patient. Yeah. I like the concept of Levia, but yeah, she's just not very, powered up right now.
I think I have some points from my experience playing the game that are positives in tracking like the development. So going to callings, asking people when they first started the game, and people tell me, oh, I started during Monarch pre-release, or I started during Tales of Aria pre-release. There's a lot of people who started around Tales of Aria.
Yeah.
And I think when you look at that, when you look at the fact that I think at the calling recently there was, I forget his name now, I should have looked this up beforehand, but there was like a kid who was like, I think like 15 or 16, like playing at the top tables. And it's just like, those are the signs that I pay attention to, where you get interest among people who are not just like old card game fans, not just like MTG fans. A lot of people saying like this is their first card game that they're playing.
Yep.
And so I think those are the points that you kind of have to look at when you are thinking about whether or not you want to be like holding on to like Flesh and Blood like long term, right?
Absolutely, yes. And just to go back really quick to what you said about Ice Age, I actually have bought and sold these past couple of years, probably between 50 and 80 boxes of Ice Age. So I've transacted, I've collected, I've graded, I've opened Ice Age. I was doing Box Wars prior to even having a channel. Like Underground Box Wars, a very high-end Magic the Gathering product. Ice Age isn't amongst the more high-end, but it was one of the things that we did because Ice Age had, not Ice Age, everything like Stronghold, Exodus, ABUR, Horseman, they had all spiked to the point where it was unreasonable to open anymore. So we had to make do with Homelands, Ice Age, and some other lesser sets just to keep the community, that little private group of 500, really high-end collectors of Magic, keep everybody entertained. We did alliances to hold us over for a little bit. And Ice Age, just like you mentioned, it came out, I believe, in 1995, because Alliances was 96. But Ice Age came out, it was an $80 box, it was an $80 box for the longest. And at this point, it's $1,100. But prior to the COVID spike, which was a Black Swan event, according to Rudy, Ice Age was about $500. And even prior to that, it was at between $400 and $500, very stable for about 2.5 years. It wasn't until the Bitcoin spike. You remember when Bitcoin in like winter of fall of 2017 jumped to about 20,000?
Yeah.
That Bitcoin spike led to a divestment from cryptocurrency to Magic the Gathering products. Because we also said this at lunch. A lot of nerdy folks, who are now in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, they had some exposure to Magic the Gathering.
Yep.
And then they were like, I'm now a Bitcoin millionaire. Now I can offset some of these Bitcoin gains and pool them into Magic the Gathering products, which are, if you're transferring a off-the-grid currency to an off-the-grid asset, it's kind of not taxable, right? So all that happened in 2017. So the 2017 spike plus the late 2020 spike, these are both Black Swan events that led to two significant jumps in Ice Age. Before that, I remember Ice Age being like $150, $200 a box in like 2015. So between 1995 to 2015, 20 years, Ice Age only doubled. Right?
So that's an interesting point that you bring up, because it also kind of like highlights the fact that the trajectory of the price for the boxes isn't really like dependent or like entirely on what like Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro like does with the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's also just like it's like a byproduct of like events that happen like in life, like outside of
consumer sentiment.
Outside of like people's control. So it's I feel like if you're like too like nose deep like into like the pricing, the detail, and you're like always like looking at the pricing every
looking
week.
At the money all the time.
I feel like you're gonna drive yourself crazy, because like there's like a lot of things that you can't like control for.
Yep.
And like the only thing that I think that LSS has control over is like whether or not they make good sets.
Yeah, whether they make a good game. And it's not just a good game, it's probably the best card game ever made. Their mission was to make great games. That's all they promised the public.
Mm-hmm.
And let me just take this moment while we're on this topic to say, there's a lot of people blaming LSS. LSS didn't know what they were doing. They printed this set. They overprinted. Honestly, I've heard this from so many large retailers. I've heard this from the people that are doing business with the largest distributors in the trading card game space. What happened was LSS was told. They were reported that a demand of roughly 500,000 Monarch boxes was necessary to satiate the market. Why? Because all these large distributors, even the big boys, they were like certain Fireball places or certain teams, right?
Yeah.
Teams of covenants were saying, "Oh no, we need 5 times the actual volume that we actually need," because they wanted to be greedy. They wanted to stash it. They felt like it was their time to print money. And what they did was they presented a scarcity to the market. They said, "Oh, look, we actually only got 10,000 boxes," when they had 100,000 boxes in the back. Or not 100,000, but let's say it was like they said 10,000 and they had like 25,000 in the back.
Yeah.
They only presented that the market had 10,000 boxes, and they wanted to hide those 15,000 boxes away from plain sight and slowly drip it out. Hey, they were getting theirs at wholesale, which is map minus whatever, 40%. Or let's say they were like, map was $80 a box. They were like $40, $45 per box.
45 to 50.
Yeah, $45 to $50 a box, which is 40% off map, because LSS wanted to make sure, they promised the retailers that there'd be this much space, this much juice, or this much profitability baked into every single box. They did their jobs. Not only did they do their jobs, James looked at whatever the reported demand was. He's like, no, let's make it under a half. Let's actually give it a quarter. And not only that, despite it being cut, the large distributors and the large retailers, they went out there and they started the bottom number. Despite having cost of $45 to $55, they exploited the general marketplace. They exploited the market being on fire, and they exploited the wallets of the loyal buyers of Flesh and Blood product. Mm-hmm. They exploited the trust that LSS had for them. And LSS was like, you're overstating numbers. There's no way. James went from 500,000 down to 125,000. That's a 4x reduction. And they still sold the product at, call it 6 to 10 times, right? That's not unfair, right? The boxes from the retailers and from TCG players, some of them being Gem ID stores, were anywhere from $350 to $500. So that's 7x up to 10x of the box prices.
Yep.
I remember because there were some boxes I was paying, or some cases I was paying $1,800 to $2,000 for. Not all my cases were $1,800 to $2,000 at dollar cost average, but still, the people that are out there just complaining about LSS, you don't know what's going on.
I feel like you
need to adjust yourself, huh?
I feel like if anyone, you should be the one.
Me for paying up to $500 a box and getting exploited by multiple LGSs or feeding, sprinkling around. I probably bought, whatever it was, 200 to 300 cases at that price. And I have all the right to complain, but that was my money. I chose to part myself from that money at that certain amount. Personally, I feel misled by certain parties, and I feel misled by the market, where there should have been more responsible retailers not being shady, right? Not being shady and misleading about the amount of supply in the market. Yep.
Yeah, I think ultimately, whether the number is 125,000, even if the number was like 250,000, like you said, like Revised has like over 1 million.
Over 1 million. I'm still buying Revised.
Yeah.
If anybody has $10,000 boxes of Revised, like I'll put together a budget to buy 100 Revised boxes. Why not? Right? You'd be selling under market, but that's what the market will bear today.
Yeah, but it's just like all these things I think aren't like in the grand scheme of things singularly going to affect like the course that Flesh and Blood takes. Like you said, like Ice Age, Homelands, whatever, they were like printed like crazy.
Yeah.
And that's not to draw a comparison between Monarch and those sets.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that like even if that had happened, these things don't make or break a game.
They don't make or break the game. Playing the game and how the publisher treats the consumers and how they follow up on their word, that actually makes or breaks the game.
Yeah, to me, like, that's the main thing that I don't like about the discourse, where everybody says, like, oh, like, this, if LSS doesn't do this, the game is going to die, or, like, they need to do this in order so that the game is, like, healthy, or whatever. It's, like, honestly, like, a lot of these things don't even matter.
They don't matter.
In the grand scheme. Like, they matter, they do matter, like, somewhat at the time, but... you don't build a game out over the course of a set or like over the course of a year. Like it's like cumulative, right?
Of course.
Like, you have to keep making good decisions.
Yeah, let these professionals do their jobs. The people in their underwear, on avatars, commenting on YouTube videos or commenting on Facebook. All you're doing is clicking keys and spouting out verbal diarrhea, on your white canvas of a post. It's meaningless. Sure, LSS, some people see it, but most of the time they're like, you don't even know what you're talking about. You've not spent a day in this industry. You've not spent a day in the shoes of an entrepreneur, and you don't know what type of logistics challenges they're facing, what cross-border, costs they're facing, what, the printing press bandwidth that they're facing, and just general considerations, general contracts that they need to fulfill. The people that are whining the loudest have no concept of business, have no concept of the TCG industry, and take it from somebody that does manage triple digits of employees, runs international businesses. I don't see anything wrong with what they're doing. They're delivering on their product, and as long as they deliver on their product, and it seems to me like they intend to for another 2 or 3 decades, because they're not going anywhere, then everything you own and purchase today, own it because you love it and own it because you believe it. And then later down the line, after multiple Black Swan events, if you happen to need some liquidity, then conveniently it might be worth something. If not, just shut up and play the game and try to get $80 boxes and enjoy yourself. Everything else is just a bunch of unneeded aggression, a bunch of entitlement, and like I said, just verbal diarrhea. Yeah, what else, man?
I feel like we've been talking for a long time.
We have.
Don't we have something to open?
We do. Okay, we're definitely going to open this.
Yes.
Whether we can actually put this on camera remains to be seen.